The warmth hit her before anything else. Not just the temperature, though, that was immediate and profound. The shift from 38 degrees outside to the enclosed. Coffee-scented warmth of a small cafe, but the quality of it. The particular warmth of a place that has been tended. Nadia stood in the doorway and felt it on her face like something physical. The cafe was modest in size, but rich in detail. The walls were exposed brick painted white, and against them stood low shelves holding an assortment of plants, pothos trailing their green vines toward the floor, a monstera with dramatic perforated leaves, succulents in mismatched clay pots, and along the windowsill, a long row of small herb pots labeled in black marker basil, thyme, mint, rosemary, lemon verbena. The tables were wooden and mismatched. Chairs mixed, some ladderback, some with cushioned seats. One long farmhouse table at the back with bench seating on either side. String lights ran along the ceiling, warm and low. And the chalk menu board behind the counter was detailed and slightly whimsical. The drink names written in a script that had small flourishes on the capital letters. There was one other customer, an elderly man in a tweed jacket at the farmhouse table, reading something on an old tablet with the focused expression of someone deeply involved. The woman behind the counter looked up. Nadia's first impression was of stillness. This woman, tall, lean, with close-cropped natural hair and a kind of face that seemed permanently engaged with whatever it was looking at, was not still in the way that people are still when nothing is happening. She was still in the way of someone who has learned to be fully present, who brings all of themselves to whatever they are doing. She was polishing a glass, and she was polishing it with her whole attention. And she turned that attention to Nadia without any adjustment, without any of the careful neutral assessment that strangers often give to other strangers, who show up in their spaces with suitcases. She was, Nadia estimated, somewhere in her early 30s. She had dark eyes and high cheekbones and a small scar at the corner of her mouth that suggested a long-ago story. She was wearing a natural linen apron over a dark green henley, and her arms, where the henley sleeves were rolled up, showed the kind of forearms that come from years of lifting things, boxes of supplies. Trays, the particular daily physical labor of running a cafe. "Come in," the woman said. Door stays open, cold comes in. Nadia stepped inside and pulled the door shut behind her. "I'm sorry," she said, for no reason in particular. It was reflects the automatic apology of someone who has learned to apologize for taking up space. "Don't apologize," the woman said. She looked at the suitcases, then at Nadia's face, with a gaze that was direct but not intrusive, the look of someone gathering information they intend to be useful. "Sit anywhere. I'll come take your order in a second." Nadia chose the table nearest the window, the one with a small ceramic pot of rosemary on it that smelled, up close, like a hillside. She sat down and set her suitcases against the wall and tried to arrange herself into the posture of a person who had not just been displaced from her life. She mostly failed. The woman came around the counter with a small glass of water and set it on the table without being asked. "We have a soup tonight," she said. "Lentil and sweet potato. It's good I made it this afternoon." She paused. "You look like you need something warm." I need to check what I have," Nadia said, reaching for her wallet. "Eat first," the woman said. "We'll sort that out later." She went back to the counter. Nadia watched her move through the small kitchen, visible behind it, efficient, unhurried, entirely comfortable. She came back in 4 minutes with a deep bowl of soup, thick and fragrant, with a piece of crusty bread balanced on the rim. "I'm Rowan," the woman said, sitting down across from Nadia with the ease of someone who does this, sits with strangers at their tables regularly and without ceremony. "Nadia." "Okay, Nadia," a pause. "Do you want to tell me what happened, or would you rather just eat?" Nadia looked at her. There was no performance in the question. It was exactly what it sounded like, a genuine option, offered without pressure, with the understanding that both answers were acceptable. "I'll eat first," Nadia said. "Good choice," Rowan said. She stood up. "I'll get you tea." She brought tea, a deep amber-colored blend that smelled of ginger and orange peel, and went back to the counter and gave Nadia the particular gift of being left alone while still not being alone. The cafe was quiet enough that Nadia could hear the soft sounds of Rowan working, the gentle clatter of things being cleaned, the low volume of music she had put on, something acoustic and unhurried. A woman's voice over a guitar. Nadia ate the soup. It was, as advertised, good, deeply savory with a warmth that was more than temperature, the kind of food that seems to know what it is for. She ate all of it and sopped up the last of it with the bread and felt, for the first time in several hours, like a person with a body that needed things and was having those things provided. When she looked up, Rowan was at the counter doing something with an invoice, and the elderly man in the tweed jacket had packed up and was making his way to the door. He stopped at the counter on his way out. "Night, Rowan," he said. "Night, Professor Ellery," Rowan said. "Your book comes in Thursday. I'll put it aside." "You're a treasure," the professor said with the warmth of a long familiarity, and went out into the cold. Rowan came and collected the bowl. She did not ask if Nadia was ready to talk. She came back with the teapot and refilled Nadia's cup and sat down again with her own mug, which said "Keep Going" in block letters on the side. "My mother asked me to leave," Nadia said. "Tonight, because I'm gay," Rowan nodded. "She found out and she wasn't violent." She wasn't cruel exactly. She was just, Nadia searched for the word, immovable. "I'm sorry," Rowan said. "I don't have anywhere to go tonight. I have friends, but their Esh stopped. It's complicated." "Okay," Rowan said. She wrapped both hands around her mug and looked at Nadia with the direct, thoughtful attention that seemed to be her default mode. "I have a back room. It has a daybed. It's used for storage mostly, but the daybed is clean and there are blankets. You can sleep there tonight." Nadia stared at her. "You don't know me." "No," Rowan agreed. "But you ate my soup and you said thank you and you look like someone who's had the worst day of their life and is handling it with more dignity than I can manage." She said it plainly, without flattery, as a statement of observed fact. "The room is there. It's yours if you want it." "I can pay. It's not a transaction," Rowan said. "It's a room. And tomorrow, when you've slept and things look the way they look in the morning rather than the way they look at night, we can figure out the next step." Nadia looked at her. She thought about the sign in the window. "All are welcome here, especially if you're cold." "Okay," she said. "Thank you." Rowan stood up. "I close at 9. You can stay at the table until then. I won't bother you." She paused. "Unless you want to be bothered." Sometimes it's better to talk. Nadia thought about it. She thought about the sealed-up feeling of carrying this alone, the weight of it pressing down. "Tell me about the cafe," she said. "How long have you had it?" Rowan sat back down. She looked around her cafe with the expression of someone taking stock of something they built with their hands. 3 years, she said. "Before this, I was in Chicago. I worked in restaurants back of house mostly. Chef, sous chef. I was good at it, but it was killing me." She said it matter-of-factly. "The hours, the culture. The particular way restaurant kitchens can be brutal to people who don't fit the mold." A small pause. "I came back to Cedar Falls because it was home and because I had a small inheritance from my grandfather and because I thought, what if I made a place I actually wanted to work in? What if I made the kitchen the way I wanted a kitchen to be?" "And did you?" Rowan looked around again. "I think so. Most days." The corner of her mouth, the side with the scar, curved slightly. "Some days it's just a cafe and the espresso machine breaks and the milk delivery is late and I've been on my feet since 5 in the morning. But most days it's what I meant it to be." "What did you mean it to be?" She considered this with a seriousness that Nadia found unexpectedly settling. This woman thought about questions before she answered them. "A place where people felt like themselves," Rowan said. "Not performing. Not managing. Just here." Nadia looked around the cafe. The plants, the mismatched chairs, the string lights, the small card in the window. "All are welcome here. I think you did it," she said. Rowan looked at her. "I walked in here 40 minutes ago with 2 suitcases and no idea what to do," Nadia said. "And I feel less destroyed than I did. Less destroyed is good," Rowan said. "Less destroyed is somewhere to start." She got up to close the cafe. Nadia sat at the table with her tea and listened to the sounds of closing, the wiping down of the counter, the clink of cups being stacked, the lock on the front door, the lights going off one by one until only the string lights and the lamp behind the counter remained. She watched Rowan move through this routine with the ease of a person who knows exactly where everything is, who has done this so many times it has become a part of them. She thought, "I don't know this person. I've known her for 40 minutes. And I feel in her presence Like something it will take me a long time to name. She was too exhausted and too newly broken to examine this thought further. She slept on the daybed in the back room under 2 blankets that smelled of lavender and clean cotton. And outside the cold March night did its business. And the maple tree on Elmwood Drive stood bare in the dark. And inside Rowan's Café on the side street off Holbrook Avenue, a woman who had just lost one kind of home began, without knowing it, to find another. Morning in the café was different from morning anywhere else Nadia had ever been. She woke at 5-40-5 to the sound of Rowan already working the grinding of coffee beans. The rhythmic sound of someone who has begun their day with purpose and is not waiting for the world to catch up. She lay on the daybed for a few minutes listening to it. Those sounds of industry filtering through the thin door between the back room and the kitchen. And felt the particular rawness of a morning after a rupture, the brief mercy of forgetting before remembering. And then the weight of what she remembered settling back onto her chest. She got up. She used the small bathroom off the back room. She looked at herself in the mirror. Her face was not as wrecked as she had feared. She was 24 years old with the kind of face her grandmother called open. Dark eyes and full lips and the expression she defaulted to in difficult situations. Which was a kind of watchful steadiness that she had been told looked like calm but was actually very much not calm. She went out into the cafe. Rowan was at the espresso machine, working with the focused precision of a surgeon, and she looked up when Nadia appeared. She was wearing a different Henley today, a dark rust color and the same linen apron, and she had what appeared to be a dusting of flour on her left forearm. "Morning," she said. "How did you sleep?" "Better than I expected," Nadia said honestly. "Good, sit at the counter. I'll make you coffee. And tell me how you take it. I don't like to assume." "Oat milk, 1 sugar," Nadia said. "If you have oat milk." "I always have oat milk," Rowan said, with a quality in her voice that suggested this was a matter of principle. She made Nadia a coffee that was, in Nadia's experience, the best coffee she had ever had in the morning, not because it was technically perfect, though it seemed to be, but because it was made by someone who was paying attention. Small difference. Enormous result. She also produced from the oven a tray of morning buns, rolled pastry with orange zest and cinnamon, and a glaze that was not too sweet, crisp at the edges and yielding inside. "You bake," Nadia said. "Every morning," Rowan said. "It's how I start. Baking requires precision and attention, and the rewards are immediate. Good way to begin a day." She paused. "What do you do?" "For work, landscape architecture," Nadia said. "I have a degree. I've been working for a firm in Des Moines for the past year, commuting twice a week, working remotely the rest of the time." Rowan looked at her with interest. "You design outdoor spaces?" "Parks mostly at the firm. Public greenways. Some residential. I like the work." She wrapped her hands around the coffee mug. "I can work from anywhere, technically. The commute to Des Moines is the constraint. Cedar Falls isn't far from Des Moines. About an hour and 40 minutes. Do you want to stay in Cedar Falls?" Rowan asked. Direct as she had been direct about everything. Not pushing, just asking. Nadia thought about this. She thought about Elmwood Drive and the green door and the maple tree, about growing up here, about the particular complicated attachment of a place that is home in your bones even when it has hurt you. "I don't know yet," she said. "That's fine," Rowan said. "You don't have to know today." She opened the cafe at 7. Nadia stayed at the counter because it felt wrong to take up a table when customers might need it, and watched the morning regulars arrive, an older woman named Harriet, who took the same corner seat every day and ordered the same thing, large Earl Grey. Slice of whatever was baked that morning, no exceptions. 2 young men from the college down the street who always ordered complicated drinks and paid in cash. A woman in her 40s named Lourdes who worked at the hospital across the avenue and stopped in every morning for a large coffee and who Rowan always had ready by the time Lourdes reached the counter. A retired firefighter named Big George who sat at the farmhouse table and read the physical newspaper, which he brought himself. Rowan knew all of them. Not in the perfunctory way of a barista who remembers orders. She knew them. She asked Harriet about her daughter's new baby, remembered the name and the weight, and asked for an update. She asked the college students about their exams with a specificity that suggested she had listened to their previous answers. She told Lourdes she'd set aside a piece of the orange morning bun because she knew, Lords liked citrus. Nadia watched this and felt something she could not immediately name, a quality of recognition. As if she were watching someone do something she'd always believed should be done but had never seen done so naturally. By 9 o'clock. The morning rush had subsided into the gentler rhythm of the mid-morning, and Rowan came and leaned against the counter near where Nadia was sitting. "Can I ask you something?" Nadia said. Double quotes, "Yes." "Why do you do that?" "The knowing people. The details." "You asked Harriet about the baby's weight." Rowan considered. "People want to be remembered," she said. "Not just their order themselves. It takes maybe 30 extra seconds to remember a detail, to follow up, to show someone that what they said last Tuesday mattered enough that you were still carrying it." She shrugged. "It's not a strategy. I just think people deserve to feel like they exist to the people they see every day." "That's a philosophy," Nadia said. "I guess it is." She pushed off the counter. "Do you want another coffee?" "Can I help?" Nadia asked. "With something. I feel I can't just sit here." Rowan looked at her. The considering look, thorough, neutral, genuinely evaluating. "Can you dice vegetables?" "Yes." "Come to the kitchen," Rowan said. The kitchen was small and exquisitely organized. Every surface assigned a purpose, every tool in its place. Rowan set her up with a cutting board and a pile of sweet potatoes and carrots and a knife that was sharp enough to make Nadia's experienced cooking hands briefly nervous. And she stood beside her for 30 seconds watching her technique and then nodded and went back to the front. They worked like that for an hour, Nadia in the kitchen, Rowan between the kitchen and the counter, and it was, Nadia thought, one of the strangest and most grounding experiences she had had in some time. She'd woken up that morning without a home and with a wound in her chest that she didn't yet know how to look at directly. And she was spending the morning dicing sweet potatoes in a stranger's kitchen, and it was improbably helping Dot at 11. Rowan brought her tea and sat across from her at the small prep table and said, "I have a room upstairs, above the cafe. I use it for storage now, but it has a window and hardwood floors and a working radiator. I was thinking about renting it eventually." She paused. "I'm not going to charge you rent for the first month. After that, we figure out something that works for both of us. If you want it." Nadia set down her tea. She looked at Rowan. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, not suspiciously, genuinely. The question she had been turning over since last night. Rowan was quiet for a moment. She looked at her hands on the table, strong hands, with a small burnt scar on the right one, the hands of someone who works with heat. "My cousin," she said eventually. 8 years ago. She was thrown out by her parents when she was 19. She was gay. She ended up, a pause. It didn't go well. For a long time. Before she found her footing. And the thing I think about when I think about that time is how different it might have gone if someone had just offered something. Something practical and solid and without conditions." She looked up. "I can't fix what happened to her, but I can have a room and a daybed and a pot of soup." Nadia sat with us. "I'm sorry about your cousin," she said. "She's okay now," Rowan said. "She's in Minneapolis. She has a good life. But it took a long time and it was harder than it needed to be." Do you stay in touch?" "We talk every week," Rowan said. "She's the one who talked me into opening this place, actually." A small smile. She said, "You've been cooking for everyone around you your whole life. Make it official." Nadia looked around the kitchen and through the pass-through at the cafe beyond it, at the plants and the string lights and the chalk menu and the card in the window. "She gave good advice," Nadia said. "She did," Rowan agreed. She stood up. "The room is yours if you want it. Think about it. There's no hurry." "I want it," Nadia said. "I don't need to think about it." Rowan looked at her. The corner of her mouth curved that slight, private smile that Nadia was beginning to recognize as Rowan's equivalent of full beam warmth. "Okay," she said. "I'll get you the key after closing." That afternoon, Nadia called Dara. She had put it off as long as she could. Not from cowardice, but from uncertainty about what to say, about how to hold the complicated layering of their history. But she needed someone who knew her, and Dara was that. Dara cried, which undid some of Nadia's carefully maintained composure. She cried into her phone sitting on a bench outside the cafe in the cold afternoon, holding the phone with both hands. While Dara said all the things that needed to be said, that it wasn't Nadia's fault, that her mother was wrong, that Nadia was loved, that she would come to Cedar Falls if Nadia needed her. "I'm okay," Nadia said. "I have a place. There's a cafe. A woman who owns it. She's given me a room." "A stranger gave you a room?" Dara said. "She's not exactly a stranger anymore," Nadia said. A pause on the line. Nadia knew Dara well enough to hear what was in that pause without it being said. "It's not like that," she said. "I didn't say anything," Dara said, in the tone of someone who is saying something. "I just met her last night. She's kind and she has a room and I needed somewhere to be. That's all." "Okay," Dara said in the same tone. Nadia looked through the cafe window at Rowan, who was at the counter with her back to the window, making something. The rust-colored Henley. The linen apron. The quality of stillness that was also somehow motion. "I'll call you in a few days," Nadia said. "When I know what I'm doing." "I'm here," Dara said. "Whenever." Anytime. Nadia hung up and sat on the bench for another moment in the cold. She thought about the room upstairs. She thought about the key she would receive at closing. She thought about waking up tomorrow and dicing vegetables and making soup and spending another day in the particular warmth of this place. She was 24 years old and she had lost one version of her life 24 hours ago, and she was sitting outside a cafe in Cedar Falls, Iowa in the cold March air. And the thing she felt underneath the grief, underneath the rawness, beneath everything was the cautious, fragile sense that something was beginning. The room above the cafe was not glamorous, it was the size of a generous walk-in closet, with a slanted ceiling on one side that followed the roofline and a single window that looked out at the back of the building, opposite a delivery alley. Unglamorous, but the window itself was large and let in a wide rectangle of sky. The hardwood floors were dusty but intact. The radiator in the corner worked as advertised, with a vigorous clanking that Nadia found almost immediately comforting, in the way that mechanical sounds in the night can become companions. There was a narrow bed frame, currently serving as a shelf for paint cans and bare walls, and a single bulb on a cord from the ceiling. Rowan helped her carry the paint cans to the actual storage room at the end of the hall. She brought a lamp from the cafe, a floor lamp with a warm-toned bulb and a set of sheets that were freshly laundered and smelled of something herbal. And she stood in the doorway of the room after and said, with honest assessment, "It's small." "It's mine," Nadia said. "For now." She slept there for the first time that night, on the floor in her sleeping bag because the bed frame needed a mattress. And in the morning, she went downstairs and asked if she could help with opening prep in exchange for breakfast. And Rowan said yes. And that became the arrangement. March became April. The arrangement became something else, more settled, more layered. Nadia had a mattress now, bought secondhand, and hauled up the stairs with considerable effort and the assistance of Big George, who had offered without being asked when he overheard the plan. She had her 2 suitcases unpacked and her clothes arranged in the small closet Rowan had cleared for her. She had, on the windowsill, 2 small plants, a trailing string of pearls, and a succulent shaped like a rose that she had bought at the farmer's market on the first Saturday she'd been in Cedar Falls. Rowan noticed the plants. Of course she did. "You're a plant person," she said, the first morning she came up to tell Nadia the cafe was open. "I'm a landscape architect," Nadia said. "It's an occupational hazard. The string of pearls is challenging. It needs very specific water." "I know," Nadia said. "I have a schedule." Rowan looked at the windowsill, then at Nadia, with the expression Nadia was learning to read as interest that was not yet ready to name itself. "Come down when you're ready," Rowan said, and went back downstairs. She worked at the cafe most mornings. Not because she had to. Rowan had a part-time assistant, a college student named Bex who came in 4 days a week, but because she found that she wanted to. She worked her remote days for the landscape firm from the cafe's farmhouse table, her laptop open amid the morning sounds of the place. And she commuted to Des Moines twice a week on the early train and came back by evening. And Rowan always had something in the kitchen: leftover soup, the end of a tart, a container of grains with roasted vegetables that she left on the prep table without comment. This was one of Rowan's languages Nadia was learning. She expressed care primarily through feeding, and through attention and through small practical acts that were done without announcement or expectation of gratitude. She would fix the squeaking door of the back room without being asked. She would put Nadia's favorite tea, a lemon ginger blend, she had mentioned once, at the top of the supply shelf without drawing attention to having done. So Nadia noticed all of these things. She was a person who paid attention in her way less sweepingly than Rowan, more focused, like a camera with a longer lens. She noticed small things and held them and thought about what they meant. She thought, frequently and with increasing difficulty, about what Rowan meant. Not in a way she was comfortable examining yet. She was 24 and recently broken and freshly arrived at the beginning of a life that looked nothing like the life she had planned. And she told herself firmly, in no position to feel things about the woman who had taken her in. She felt things about the woman who had taken her in. They were careful things, small and contained. The warmth that came from being in Rowan's presence. The way she watched Rowan's hands when Rowan worked, the precision of them, the sureness, the years of practice visible in every movement. The particular quality of attention she felt when Rowan looked at her. As if she were something worth looking at carefully. She kept all of this inside herself very securely. In April, she called her mother. She'd been building up to it for 3 weeks. Drafting the conversation in her mind, considering all the ways it could go. She called on a Sunday afternoon when she knew her mother would be home. Sitting in the back room of the cafe with the door closed, her hands cold and her pulse elevated in the way it always was. Before difficult things, her mother answered on the 3rd ring. The conversation was not the conversation she had rehearsed. It was shorter and more halting and more painful than any of the versions she had imagined. Her mother's voice was careful, not warm, but not the terrible controlled anger of that evening in March either. She was managing herself. Nadia understood. She was trying. Are you safe? Her mother asked. Yes. Are you eating? Yes. A long silence. I don't know how her mother started and stopped. I need time, Nadia. I need to understand. I know. I love you, her mother said, stiffly, with the difficulty of someone saying a true thing in very difficult circumstances. That hasn't changed. I want you to know that. Nadia sat with the phone against her ear and felt the tears arrive, not the wrenching kind, but the quiet kind, the ones that come from grief that is complicated and real and has no clean resolution. I love you too. Mom, she said. They talked for 11 minutes. They covered almost nothing of substance. But when they hung up, Nadia sat in the back room for a long time. And then she opened the door to the cafe. Rowan looked at her from the counter, one look, quick and complete, and came around to where Nadia was standing. She did not ask what happened or how it went or what Nadia was feeling. She just put her hand on Nadia's shoulder, briefly, with the matter-of-fact warmth of someone who knows when a gesture is enough, and then she said, I'm making you tea. Sit down. Nadia sat at the counter and Rowan made her tea, and the cafe settled around her like something protective. And she thought, this is what I am learning. That home is not always a building. Sometimes it is a quality of being held by a space and by the person in it, without being asked to explain yourself, without being required to earn the warmth. She thought about the sign in the window. All are welcome here, she thought. I am here. I am welcome. I'm beginning. In April, she also, for the first time since she had arrived in Cedar Falls, looked at her sketchbook. She had brought it in the second suitcase, her professional one. The one with her equipment and her tools, without quite deciding to. It was a large spiral-bound book, half filled with project sketches and site plans and the particular architectural shorthand of her profession. She had not opened it since leaving Elmwood Drive. She opened it one evening in her room and looked at what was their plans for a public greenway she had been working on. Sketches of tree placements and water features and pedestrian paths, and then she turned to a blank page and without planning to, without intending anything, she drew the cafe. She drew it as it looked in the morning, the counter, the espresso machine, the plants in the windows, the chalk menu board with its careful script. She drew the farmhouse table and the string lights and the small pot of rosemary on the table by the window. She drew the card, all are welcome here, and then, almost before she realized she was doing it, she drew the figure behind the counter. She drew Rowan with the quick, economical lines of someone who has been looking at something long enough to know its shapes. The close-cropped hair, the high cheekbones. The quality of attention that she had never quite figured out how to describe and now was trying to capture. In line and shadow, she looked at what she had drawn. For a long time, then she closed the sketchbook and put it back on the shelf. She lay on her bed and stared at the slanted ceiling and thought about the string of pearls on the windowsill which needed careful watering. May arrived, and with it the particular Midwestern magic of a spring that finally commits warm days. Cold nights, the trees erupting into green so sudden and thorough it seemed to happen overnight. The cafe's window boxes, which Rowan had planted with pansies and sweet alyssum in April, came into bloom. Nadia repotted the monstera that had been slightly root-bound since she'd moved in, because she had noticed and because she knew how. And Rowan had come in to find her doing it on the prep table with the professional focus of someone in their element. "You're repotting my monstera," Rowan said. "It was root-bound," Nadia said. "See the way the roots were coming out the bottom? It needed a larger pot. I found one in the storage room. I hope that's okay." Rowan looked at the monstera, now settled in its new pot, and then at Nadia, who had soil on her hands and the focused expression of someone who has just done a necessary thing. "It's more than okay," Rowan said. This became a pattern. Nadia began, gradually and without formal arrangement, to tend the plants. She was a landscape architect. Green things were her professional domain, and the cafe had an abundance of them that Rowan loved and cared for but did not have the time or expertise to optimize. Nadia pruned and repotted and diagnosed and sourced. And the cafe's plants responded with the visible gratitude of things that have been given what they needed. Growing more full and vivid and generous. Rowan began, in parallel, to cook for Nadia with increasing deliberateness. This was something Nadia had to think about carefully to understand, because Rowan did it so quietly and so naturally that it was easy to miss. She'd always left food on the prep table: soup, tarts, leftover lunch things, but in May it became more specific. She learned that Nadia's father was Nigerian and that Nadia had grown up eating jollof rice and egusi soup and suya on weekends, and she started, without comment, researching. She found a source for crayfish powder and locust beans at a shop across town. She made egusi soup one Thursday evening and left it on the prep table with a note that said, "Not as good as your grandmother's." The honest Nadia tasted it and sat down and stared at the ceiling. It was not exactly her grandmother's. It was Rowan's version, careful and researched and deeply respectful of the thing it was attempting. And it was so good that Nadia felt the warmth of it all the way to the back of her throat and behind her eyes. She'd all of it, sitting at the prep table with the lights on low and the night outside. And then she washed the container and put it back on the shelf and went upstairs and called her grandmother in Lagos. Her grandmother had not known what had happened in March. Nadia had not told her, protecting her from the weight of it. But her grandmother had known. In the way grandmothers know things across distances, that something had shifted. And she had asked in her careful way, and Nadia had said she was fine, and her grandmother had said yes, but what happened? And Nadia had told her grandmother was quiet for a long time. Then she said in Yoruba, which was the language she switched to when she wanted to be most precisely herself, "You are my heart. Whatever you are my heart." Nadia pressed the phone against her forehead and breathed. "She will come around," her grandmother said, meaning Nadia's mother. "She is frightened. Fear makes people small. But she loves you. I know her heart. She loves you." "I know," Nadia said. And this woman, her grandmother said, with the precision of someone who has heard everything in a voice and extracted its meaning, "This woman who made you egusi soup. She's kind," Nadia said carefully. Her grandmother said, in the tone that contained volumes. "It's not, I didn't say anything," her grandmother said, in the same tone as Dara had used months earlier. Nadia lay on her back on her bed after the call and stared at the slanted ceiling and thought about people who said things without saying them. The first time she and Rowan sat together for a real meal was in mid-May. On a Thursday evening after the cafe closed. Rowan had made groundnut stew. She had been researching West African cooking for weeks now. Nadia had noticed the books on the prep table, the printed recipes, and she had set the table in the cafe with actual table settings, not just paper napkins and mismatched cutlery. And when Nadia came downstairs, she found candles lit and music playing something Nigerian, Afrobeats at low volume that she recognized immediately. "Sit down," Rowan said. She was in the kitchen, her back to the cafe. "I tried ditto. The plantains. They might be, are those plantains?" Nadia said. "They're dodo, technically." She appeared in the pass-through with a plate. "I've made them 3 times this week trying to get the caramelization right. I think I'm close." Nadia tasted one. It was, by any measure, extremely close. The outside was caramelized and slightly crisp, and the inside was sweet and tender, and it tasted like every big family dinner of her childhood. Like her mother's kitchen before the green door. Like something she had not let herself grieve, because grief for a specific smell or taste is somehow harder than grief for larger things. "It's perfect," she said. Her voice was not entirely steady. Rowan came out of the kitchen and sat down across from her and looked at her face and said nothing. She just looked with the full attention that was her most constant quality and let Nadia feel what she was feeling. "Thank you," Nadia said. "For doing this." "The research." "The soup last week." She looked at Rowan. "You didn't have to." "I know," Rowan said. "Why did you?" A long pause. Rowan looked at the table, the candles, the careful setting, the food she had spent weeks learning to make. She looked like someone choosing between several true answers. "Because you're far from the people and the things that fed you," she said finally. "Literally and otherwise. And because food is the thing I know how to offer." She looked up. "And because I wanted to." The last part said simply, without dramatics, landed somewhere important in Nadia's chest. They ate together for 2 hours. They talked about food and about family and about the particular Nigerian diaspora experience of Nadia's childhood. Her father, who had come to the U.S. at 22 for graduate school and never gone back except to visit, who had kept his culture in the kitchen and in music and in the particular density of family connections. Her mother, Black American, who had learned to make jollof rice for love and had done it better than anyone had expected. They talked about Rowan's family, too, her mother, who was a librarian and who had raised Rowan and her brother after their father left when Rowan was 8. The cousin in Minneapolis, Maya, who called every week. The grandmother who had died 3 years ago and who Rowan still cooked for, in a sense because so many of the recipes were hers. "She taught you to cook?" Nadia said. "She taught me that cooking was care," Rowan said. "That feeding someone well was an act of love. Not romantic love necessarily, just love. The kind you offer to people because they deserve to be cared for." Nadia looked at her. The candlelight was doing something to Rowan's face, deepening the shadows, brightening the eyes, and the music was low and warm. And the cafe was completely theirs at this hour, closed and quiet. "I draw people when I want to understand them," Nadia said, without entirely planning to. "It's the way I know how to pay attention." "Like you cook. Have you drawn me?" Rowan asked. A pause. "Yes." Rowan looked at her steadily. "Can I see it?" "Someday," Nadia said. The word someday was a small and careful thing, but it implied continuation. It implied a future in which they were still in each other's lives, in which the drawing might be shared. It was, Nadia understood as she said it, the first thing she had said that acknowledged the existence of that future directly. Rowan heard it. She was too attentive not to. She looked at Nadia with an expression that was, or the first time since Nadia had known her, not entirely composed. "I'll look forward to that," she said. They did the dishes together. They did them the way people do dishes when they are not hurrying, when the act itself has become a kind of extension of the conversation, when the ordinary choreography of shared space feels significant. When Nadia went upstairs to her room, she stood at the window for a long time looking at the rectangle of night sky. And she thought about the word someday and about what she had meant by it and about the expression on Rowan's face when she had heard it. She opened her sketchbook to a new page. She drew the cafe by candlelight, the set table, the food, the music implied in the way she drew the space. She drew Rowan across the table, hands wrapped around a glass of water, eyes slightly more open than usual, the scar at the corner of her mouth visible. She drew herself as she rarely did from the outside. The way she imagined she looked in that moment, not destroyed, not provisional. Not at the beginning of something she wasn't sure she deserved. Present, warm, choosing to be here. She wrote underneath, I think I'm staying. June. Nadia had been in Cedar Falls for 3 months. She'd been in the room above Rowan's cafe for 3 months, and she was willing to admit to herself in the privacy of her own head, falling in love with Rowan for approximately 2 of them. She was not doing anything about this. She was not doing anything about it because Rowan was her landlord and the person who had given her stability when she had none, and because she was aware, as any thoughtful person would be, of the power differential implicit in that situation. She did not want to be someone who confessed gratitude for love, or who placed a burden on the person who had helped them. She did not want to be Rowan's project. These were the reasons she gave herself, and they were good reasons, real reasons. But there was also another reason that she turned over in the small hours of the night: fear. Not of Rowan and not of her own feelings, but of the specific kind of loss that comes from risking something with someone you care about and having it change the thing that is already between you. What she had with Rowan, the dinners, the mornings in the kitchen, the quality of being known, was precious in a way that was hard to overstate. She had come to Cedar Falls with nothing and had been given something extraordinary, and she was afraid of doing anything that might unmake it. So she stayed in herself, and she worked, and she tended the plants, and she drew in her sketchbook, and she had dinners with Rowan, and she thought, doing an acceptable job of managing the situation. She was, Dara informed her during their weekly call in early June, doing a terrible job of managing the situation. You're in love with her, Dara said. I'm being careful, Nadia said. You've been careful for 2 months. You described her making Nagusi soup, and you almost cried on the phone with me. You have drawn her how many times? That's how many times? A pause. 11, Nadia admitted. But it's artistic observation. She has an interesting Nadia. I know, Nadia said. You deserve to be happy, Dara said, with a directness that was one of the things Nadia loved most about her. You've spent 4 months rebuilding yourself from the ground up. You have a home and a job and a life. You are allowed to also have a feeling. And maybe tell the person about it. It's complicated. It's only complicated if you make it complicated, Dara said. What if she feels the same? Nadia thought about Rowan's face by candlelight, about the expression when she'd said someday, about the agusi soup and the dodo and the careful weekly research into a cuisine that was not Rowan's and was entirely for Nadia. What if she does? She said. Then you figure it out together, Dara said. That's what people do. Nadia thought about this for a long time after she hung up. She thought about it while she was walking to the farmer's market on Saturday morning, and while she was choosing tomatoes and thinking about whether the cafe needed more chives in the sipes and the window box, and while she was standing in the herb stall smelling bundles of fresh lemon. Turned out she was thinking about it so hard that she walked directly into another person coming around the end of the stall. I'm sorry, she said, and looked up. It was a woman she didn't recognize, about her age, white, with red hair and paint-stained hands and an expression of amused surprise. Entirely my fault, the woman said. I was looking at the dill. Are you okay? Fine, Nadia said. Sorry. They separated. Nadia bought her tomatoes and her chives and walked back to the cafe and found Rowan at the outside table, the one she had put out in May. A single small table on the sidewalk with 2 chairs, where she sometimes sat in the early afternoon with coffee and paperwork. Rowan looked up when Nadia appeared with her market bag. Good haul? She said. Excellent tomatoes, Nadia said. And I found ramps. Ramps? Rowan's expression changed in the way it changed when she encountered an ingredient she wanted to work with. Alert. Interested, already planning. Ramps, Nadia said. Producing them from the bag, Rowan took them and held them and smelled them with the concentration of a wine expert with a glass. And Nadia stood on the sidewalk and looked at her, and felt the thing in her chest that she had been carrying for 2 months with such careful containment, and thought, I'm not going to be able to contain this forever. I'm going to make something with these tonight, Rowan said. Will you eat with me? Yes, Nadia said. Obviously. Rowan looked up from the ramps. She looked at Nadia with a direct, full attention look that Nadia had never quite found a way to receive without having to breathe deliberately. Good, she said, and went back to her paperwork. The dinner that night was ramp pasta, fresh pasta, that Rowan made from scratch on the prep table while Nadia sat at the counter and watched with the attention she brought. To think she wanted to understand with a brown butter sauce and crispy capers and shaved parmesan. It was extraordinary. It was also, Nadia thought, watching Rowan plate it with the careful eye of someone who understands that the way food looks is part of the experience. An act of art. You're an artist, Nadia said. Rowan looked up from the plates. I'm a cook. That's the same thing, Nadia said. People say that. I don't think it's quite right. She brought the plates to the table. An artist's work is finished when it leaves them. Mine disappears in minutes. The work only exists while it's being eaten. After that, it's just memory. Nadia looked at her. That's beautiful, she said. And also sad, is it? Rowan sat down. I think it's honest. The point isn't the object. The point is the experience of it. The moment. She looked at the pasta. It's about now. They ate. The pasta was, as its components suggested it would be, extraordinary. The ramps were grassy and sweet and slightly sharp. Exactly right with the butter and the salt of the capers. I need to tell you something, Nadia said. Somewhere in the middle of the meal, without planning to, Rowan put down her fork. She did not say what or make any sound of impatience. She just turned her full attention to Nadia and waited. Nadia looked at her hands on the table. I've been careful, she said. About what I'm feeling. About you. Because you've done so much for me and I didn't want to. I was afraid of making it complicated. Of being the person who confused gratitude with something else. She looked up. But I don't think that's what this is. I think I know the difference, and I think what I feel is ... She stopped. I'm in love with you, she said. I have been for months. And I wanted you to know. The cafe was quiet. The candles on the table, Rowan lit candles for their dinners. Always made small warm patterns on the tablecloth. Rowan was looking at her with an expression that was fully open, not composed. Not managing anything, just Rowan. Without the careful layer that was usually there. I know the difference too, Rowan said. Between what you feel for someone who helped you and what you feel for someone you've seen. She paused. I've been watching you for 3 months. I know how you think and how you move. And how you look when you're fully absorbed in something, and how you sound when you're working through a problem out loud. And how you look in the morning before you've had coffee, and how you look at the cafe as if it's something that deserves to be looked at. She looked at Nadia directly. I'm in love with you, she said. I have been afraid to say it for different reasons than yours. But I have been. Nadia sat very still. Different reasons? She said. I didn't want to be someone who takes advantage of a situation, Rowan said. You came to me with nothing. I had all the structural power in the room, the job, the stability. I was afraid that saying anything would feel coercive. Would change what you thought the room and the food were about. The food was about feeding me, Nadia said. The room was about having somewhere to sleep. Yes, and this is something else. Yes, Rowan said. These are different things. Yes, Rowan said. They are. A pause. Do you believe that? Nadia thought about it. She thought about the egusi soup and what it had meant. She thought about the dinners and the mornings and the plants and the drawn figure in her sketchbook. She thought about what Rowan had said weeks ago. The point is the experience of it. The moment. It's about now. Yes, she said. I believe that. Rowan reached across the table and put her hand over Nadia's. Her hand was warm and sure the burnt scar on the right one. The hands that cooked and carried and built and offered. Then we go slowly, Rowan said. And we're honest with each other. About what we need and what we feel and when we're uncertain. Yes, Nadia said. And we eat this pasta before it gets cold. Rowan said, because I made it from scratch and cold pasta is a waste of a good evening. Nadia laughed a full, unguarded laugh, the kind that comes from somewhere deep and real, and picked up her fork. And outside, on the side street off Holbrook Avenue, Cedar Falls went about its early summer evening. The air warm with the particular fragrance of a Midwestern June, the trees fully leafed and green. The world going about the ordinary business of an ordinary Thursday while inside the cafe. Two women ate ramp pasta by candlelight and began, with care and honesty and their hands touching across the table. To begin, they were careful with each other. This was a word they both returned to, independently and together when they talked about what they were doing. Not careful in the sense of guarded or withheld, careful in the sense of the craftsperson who handles something precious. Who moves slowly because the work matters? Who understands that getting it right is more important than getting it done? They had agreed, without formalizing it, that they would not rush. Nadia was still in the process of rebuilding her life from a disruption that was recent and deep. And Rowan had her own history of a relationship she did not speak about in detail, but which had clearly mattered and clearly ended badly, and which had left, she acknowledged, a tendency toward caution that she was working to balance against the risk that caution becomes avoidance. So they ate dinner together 3 times a week. They had coffee on Sunday mornings at the table outside when the weather allowed, sitting in the pale Iowa sun with their respective reading and talking easily about whatever came. They worked together in the mornings with the same choreography as before. But now there were small touches added to it, a hand on a shoulder, a moment of standing close at the counter looking at the same thing, a look across the room that was its own language. Nadia began in June to redesign the cafe's outdoor space. This was her professional gift, offered because she saw what could be done and because she loved the cafe and because she wanted to give Rowan something that used what she was specifically good at. She made a proposal, a real one, with site drawings and plant lists and a phased budget, and presented it to Rowan one evening at the farmhouse table. Rowan looked at the drawings for a long time. They showed the front of the cafe transformed, a widened sidewalk seating area, bounded by low planters filled with herbs and flowering perennials. A small trellis structure against the building's front wall, to be grown with climbing roses and honeysuckle. Window boxes redesigned and integrated into the building's architecture. The existing window plants extended into a connected outdoor-indoor experience. You drew this from memory, Rowan said. She was looking at the elevation drawing the front of the building rendered in Nadia's architectural hand, accurate in every proportion. I've been looking at this building for 3 months, Nadia said. I know it. Rowan looked at her. You know it? I know it, Nadia said. Simply, with the fullness of someone meaning more than one thing. Rowan looked back at the drawing. Can we do it this summer? Phase 1, yes. The planters and the window boxes. The trellis takes longer, the roses need to establish. But by next spring it'll be there. Next spring, Rowan said. It was a future. They both heard it as a future. Yes, Nadia said. They started in July. Nadia sourced the plants from a nursery she had found through a free landscape contact in Des Moines, choosing carefully for zone hardiness and seasonal interest and the particular quality of the plants she wanted, not the generic, annual and shrub approach of commercial landscaping, but something more considered, more specific to the place. She installed the planters herself, rented a truck, and did the heavy work on a Monday when the cafe was closed. And Rowan came out at noon to find the front of the building transform, the planters in place. The plants installed, the window boxes were planted with a feuille scheme that moved from cool lavender and silver at the far end to warm herbs and trailing nasturtiums near the eave. Rowan stood on the sidewalk and looked at it for a long time without speaking. Nadia stood beside her and waited. It looks like it was always here, Rowan said finally. It looks like the building always had this and was waiting. That's what good landscape design does, Nadia said. It doesn't impose. It reveals. Rowan turned and looked at her with the full open expression that still, after months, was not a thing Nadia could receive without effort. You're extraordinary, Rowan said, simply. As a fact, Nadia looked at the planters, at the nasturtiums spilling their orange and yellow over the brick, at the lavender already drawing bees. I'm a person doing what I'm good at, she said. For somewhere I love. In July, Nadia's mother called her. Not the careful, managed calls of the previous months, not the 11-minute conversations about weather and logistics that had been, despite their limitations, a kind of connection. This was different. She called on a Thursday evening when Nadia was on the roof of the building. Rowan had shown her the access hatch, and Nadia had made the small roof terrace into a project, with container plants and a folding chair and a view of Cedar Falls that was better than it had any right to be, and she answered, and her mother's voice was different. I've been talking to someone, her mother said. A counselor. At the church. She stopped. Started again. I've been wrong, Nadia, in how I handled this. I need you to know that. Nadia sat down in the folding chair. The evening was warm and gold and smelled of the lemon verbena she had planted in the largest container. Mom, she said. I'm not all the way there, her mother said. With the honesty that Nadia had grown up with, the same honesty she had inherited. I'm still working through things. But I know I was wrong to ask you to leave. I know that. And I need you to hear me say it. I hear you, Nadia said. Can I see you? Her mother asked. Can I come to Cedar Falls? Or can you come home? Whichever you want. Nadia thought about the green door, the maple tree, the kitchen table where she had told the truth and paid for it. Come here, she said. Come to Cedar Falls, there's someone I want you to meet. A pause. The cafe woman, her mother said. Her name is Rowan, Nadia said. And yes. Her mother arrived on a Saturday morning in late July. Nadia met her at the train station. And they stood on the platform and looked at each other for a moment. Her mother, who was a tall woman with Nadia's eyes and the particular posture of someone who has been carrying something heavy and is considering setting it down, and then her mother said, come here, in a voice that had no management in it, just itself. And Nadia went. They held each other for a long time on the platform, and the train departed around them, and the summer morning went about its business. Her mother's first impression of Rowan was the same as most people's, the stillness, the direct attention, the sense of someone who is entirely present. She extended her hand to Rowan in the cafe, and Rowan shook it and said, I'm glad you're here, with the particular Rowan quality of meaning exactly what she said. Her mother looked around the cafe. She looked at the plants the monstera Nadia had repotted, the herbs on the windowsill, the outdoor planters visible through the window, and she looked at the chalk menu and the string lights and the sign in the window. She looked at all the evidence of a place that had been made with love and intention. This is where you've been, she said. Not as an accusation, as a recognition. This is where I've been, Nadia said. Her mother looked at her daughter, at the version of her daughter that had been made in the past 4 months. In this place, with this person, and something moved across her face that was complicated and genuine and ultimately tender. You look well, she said. I am, Nadia said. I really am. They ate lunch at the farmhouse table. Rowan made jollof rice, the real kind. Nadia's grandmother's recipe that Nadia had sent her, and that Rowan had been practicing in the weeks since she'd known the visit was coming. Nadia's mother tasted it and looked at Rowan with an expression that shifted perceptibly. You made this, she said. Yes, Rowan said. A pause. For her, Nadia's mother said. Yes. Rowan said. Nadia's mother looked at her plate, and then at Nadia, and then at Rowan, and then at something in the middle distance that seemed to be some rearranging of the world as she understood it. You. No, she said finally to Rowan, with the particular cadence of a black woman saying a significant thing in a measured way. When my daughter called me and told me about you, I worried. I thought, a stranger has taken in my child, and what does that mean? What does that cost? She paused. But this, she gestured at the jollof rice. You didn't make this for a stranger. No. Rowan said. You made this for her, Nadia's mother said. Yes. Rowan said. Nadia sat between them and felt the thing in her chest that she had not been able to finally name itself. It was not only love, though it was that. It was something larger. The sense of being someone whose belonging was being acknowledged from multiple directions at once by people who knew her and had chosen to claim her anyway. Her mother at the table, Rowan across from it, the cafe around her, the plants she attended, the drawings in her sketchbook, the word someday that had become next spring that had become now. Yes, she said, for no reason except that the word felt right. She made it for me. Love is not only the good days. Anyone who tells you otherwise is not telling you about love. They're telling you about something easier and more temporary. August was hard. It began with a phone call from Nadia's firm in Des Moines. The project she'd been assigned to a large public greenway on the city's south side had been funded by a city grant that was now in question because of a budget dispute at the council level. The project was on hold indefinitely. This did not mean her job was gone, but it meant her hours were reduced. And reduced hours meant reduced income. And reduced income meant the second month's rent she had begun paying Rowan a fair but minimal amount. Arrived at through an honest negotiation that Nadia had insisted on and Rowan had agreed to was now a source of anxiety. Rather than a settled matter, she did not tell Rowan immediately. She processed it for 2 days alone, running numbers in her small room, drafting alternative plans, freelance work which she had done some of but not systematically, design consulting, teaching the community college how to design certificate program that she had noticed and not pursued. On the third day, Rowan said, "Over morning coffee, tell me what's happening." Nadia looked up from her laptop. "You've been quiet for 3 days, Rowan said. You get quiet in a specific way when you're working through something difficult. Different from your regular work quiet. You blink more. I blink more? Faster, not continuously. When you hit something you don't like." She paused. "What is it?" Nadia told her. She told her simply and completely, including the numbers and the alternative plans she had drafted. Rowan listened without interrupting. When Nadia finished, she looked at the laptop, then at Nadia. "The freelance track is the right one," she said. "You have a client base starting the Café is one. The 2 community projects you consulted on last month are 2 more. You need 3 more clients to replace the firm income." She paused. "There's a community garden project in the Holbrook neighborhood. I heard about it from Professor Ellery. They've been trying to find a designer. I'll connect you." "You don't have to." "I know," Rowan said. "But it's a practical step that addresses the problem. And we don't leave problems sitting around when we have tools to address them." She said it in the plural without seeming to notice. Or perhaps noticing entirely and choosing. "I'm also," Nadia stopped. "What?" "I'm worried about the rent," Nadia said. "This month." Rowan looked at her steadily. "The rent doesn't change," she said. "If you need a month to work this out, the rent waits." "I don't want Nadia." Rowan's voice was not impatient. It was the voice she used when she wanted to be fully heard. "We are in a relationship. People in relationships navigate financial difficulty together. That doesn't mean I'm supporting you, it means we figure it out together. With honesty. Which is what you just did." She paused. "Do not apologize for telling me the truth." Nadia looked at her. "Okay," she said. "Okay," Rowan said, but August was also hard in another way. Rowan had a history that Nadia was only gradually learning. In pieces and installments, in the way that you learn the important things about a person not all at once, but revealed over time as trust deepens. The history included, as she had alluded to once and not revisited, a relationship that had mattered. Her name was Simone. Nadia pieced it together over weeks. A woman Rowan had been with for 3 years in Chicago. A chef as well, someone who had been central to Rowan's life and who had left, or more precisely, around whom the situation had become untenable. For reasons that Rowan did not detail, but that had something to do with Simone's ambition and the specific costs it had imposed on Rowan and the gradual erosion of Rowan's own sense of what she needed and deserved. She did not hear this story from Rowan directly, not at first. She heard it in fragments, a reference here, a silence there. The way Rowan's jaw set when someone at the Café mentioned a restaurant in Chicago Nadia had not heard of. She heard it in the way Rowan sometimes checked herself in moments of affection, not pulling back exactly, but a slight hesitation. A quick internal accounting. She asked about it one evening in August directly, because she decided that directness was the only way to be with Rowan and that the things she didn't ask were the things that would create distance. "Tell me about Simone," she said. Rowan was at the kitchen counter, washing a pan. She was still for a moment. "Maya told you about her," she said. Not accusatory, accepting. "She mentioned her once. I put things together myself." Rowan set the pan in the drying rack. She dried her hands. She came and sat across from Nadia at the prep table. "She was the person before this," Rowan said. "Before Cedar Falls, the last series, the last real thing." She looked at her hands. "She was brilliant and driven, and we loved each other. But she needed me to be something I wasn't, smaller, more willing to be a supporting character in her story. A pause. I stayed too long. I shrank myself for too long. By the time I left, I had to spend about 2 years finding out who I was when I wasn't organized around her. Nadia listened. The cafe was part of that, Rowan said. The coming back to Cedar Falls, making something mine. Building a space I actually wanted to be in. And what you said to me. About power dynamics, about not wanting to take advantage. Yes, Rowan said. I'd been on the wrong side of that. Where the person with more structural power uses it even without fully intending to. I was very aware of not doing that. You didn't, Nadia said. I tried hard not to. You didn't, Nadia said again, more firmly. I want you to know that. Whatever I feel, whatever we are, I came to it from my own choice and my own understanding. Not because of the room or the food or any of it. Because of who you are. Rowan looked at her across the table. The kitchen light was warm and outside the August night was soft and the cafe was quiet around them. I believe you, Rowan said. Good, Nadia said. Now tell me what else you need to say about it. All of it, because I want to know you. All of it. So Rowan told her. She told her everything, the beginning with Simone, the long middle, the ending. The 2 years of recovery, the cafe, the cousin, the choices that had been made in full consciousness of what was at stake. She talked for almost 2 hours, and Nadia listened with the full attention that was her own version of Rowan's quality of presence. And when Rowan was done, they sat for a while in the quiet kitchen. You are not small, Nadia said. I know that now. Rowan said. I would never need you to be small, Nadia said. For what it's worth. It's worth a great deal, Rowan said. Later that night, alone in her room, Nadia drew Rowan again. She drew her at the prep table, hands in front of her, looking directly at the viewer. She drew her at full size, not the composed version. Not the careful version, but the one that had sat in the kitchen and told the truth about a hard thing and had not flinched from being known. Underneath it, she wrote, She's not small. Neither am I. This is what we are. She looked at it for a long time. Then she went downstairs and knocked on the door of Rowan's apartment, the small one at the back of the building. Where Rowan lived, which Nadia had seen but never stayed in, Rowan answered. She looked at Nadia in the late-night quiet. Stay, Nadia said. I don't mean, she paused. Stay, just, I don't want to be upstairs and you to be down here. Rowan looked at her for a long moment. Come in, she said. They sat on Rowan's couch with tea and talked until well past midnight. And nothing happened except that they were in the same room and it was the right room to be in. And in the morning, Nadia woke on the couch under a blanket that Rowan had put over her some time after she fell asleep. And the sound of coffee grinding meant the day had begun. September arrived. And with it the change of the season that Nadia had, without knowing it, been waiting for. She had spent her first spring and summer in Cedar Falls, watching things establish themselves in the planners she had built, the lavender finding its roots, the nasturtiums sprawling with joyful excess, the climbing rose on the trellis putting up its first tentative runners. She had watched things take hold. She had watched the slow work of growing pay off in the visible, daily way that plants reward attention. A new leaf here, a shoot there, the steady accumulation of something becoming what it was meant to be, she thought. Watching the cafe's front garden come into its September fullness, that this was also what she was doing. Not metaphorically, or not only metaphorically. She was practically and specifically putting down roots. She had freelance clients now. The community garden project that Professor Ellery had connected her to had led to a commission from the neighborhood association. That had led to a conversation with the Parks Department. That had led to a proposal for a small greenway redesign on the north side of town that she had submitted in August, and that was. Her contact at the department had told her. Looking very likely, she was, for the first time, building a practice that was entirely hers. She had begun to understand. Building a life that was entirely hers, not the life she had planned. Not the life she'd been asked to be in by her family or her firm or the accumulated expectations of 24 years. Something new. Something made in the particular climate of Rowan's Café on a side street in Cedar Falls, Iowa, in the aftermath of a rupture that had felt, at the time, like an ending. She thought about this on a September morning when she was in the cafe's small outdoor space. deadheading the roses before opening. Her hands in garden gloves and her mind in the particular focused quiet of physical work she knew how to do. Rowan came out with 2 coffees and leaned against the doorframe. "You look like you belong there," she said. "I do," Nadia said. She stood up and stripped off her gloves. "The rose is going to be extraordinary next spring. It's put on a lot of growth this summer." "You said that?" "You said it would be there by next spring." "I did," Nadia said. Rowan handed her the coffee. They stood together in the September morning, in the garden that had not existed 4 months ago, and drank their coffees and watched the neighborhood begin its day. "I've been thinking about something," Rowan said. "Tell me." "The upstairs room," Rowan said. "The one you're in." Nadia looked at her. "What about it?" "It's too small," Rowan said, "for someone who is doing what you're doing. You need a workspace. Actual desk space, drafting space. You've been working on the farmhouse table and it's fine, but it's not." She paused. "And my apartment has 2 rooms. One of which is a room I don't use except as a reading room." Another pause. "I've been thinking about whether you might want to be in the apartment with me. The room you're in could be your studio." Nadia looked at her. "That's a significant thing," Nadia said. "I know," Rowan said. "I've thought about it a significant amount." "When did you start thinking about it?" Rowan looked at her coffee. "The evening you came downstairs and knocked on my door," she said. "In August. That was 6 weeks ago. I told you I thought about it a significant amount." Nadia looked at the rose on the trellis, the runners she had trained upward with careful ties, heading toward the second-story window that was she now realized the window of the room Rowan was describing. "What does it mean?" she asked. Not playing games, genuinely asking. "Moving in together. What does that mean to you?" Rowan looked at her. The direct, open look. "It means I want you here," she said. "Not as a tenant. Not as someone I've given a room to. As the person I want to come home to." She paused. "I know we've been careful. I know it hasn't been very long by some measures. But I know you. I know you in the ways that matter. I know how you work and how you think and what you look like when you're figuring something out and what you need when you're sad and how you are with the people you love." She looked at the rose. "I know you're someone who tends things," she said. "Who sees what something needs and gives it that. And I want that in my life. Not just through the ceiling. In my actual life." Nadia stood with her coffee in the September morning. She thought about the night in March, with the 2 suitcases and the green door. She thought about the word someday and about next spring, and about the jollof rice and the egusi soup and the dodo and the ramp pasta. She thought about the sketchbook and the 11 drawings and the one that said she is not small. Neither am I. She thought about her mother at the farmhouse table and Dara on the phone and her grandmother in Lagos saying "You are my heart." She thought about what home was. Whether it was a place or a person or both, whether it was something you were born into, or something you found or something you made with your hands in the aftermath of lost. She thought, "I know the answer. I have known it for months. I was just waiting for the moment to be right." "Okay," she said. Rowan looked at her. "Yes," Nadia said. "I want to be here. With you? I want to live in your apartment and have my studio upstairs and tend the roses and eat everything you cook and be the person you come home to." She paused. "If that's what you're asking." "That's exactly what I'm asking," Rowan said. They moved Nadia's things downstairs that weekend. It was not a large operation. She had not accumulated much in 6 months, by design and by circumstance. And what she had fit into her 2 original suitcases, plus a collection of boxes that Bex, the part-time assistant, helped carry. The room upstairs became, over 2 weeks, a studio. Nadia's drafting table by the window, the large one. The one looking out at the alley, which was after all a good north light. Her professional supplies organized on shelves she'd installed herself. Her plants distributed between the studio and the apartment, below in a configuration she had planned carefully. The climbing rose outside the studio window had reached the sill by then, its tendrils pressing against the glass as if trying to look in. "It's going to come through the window by spring," Rowan said, looking at it from the studio on the first morning. "That's the plan," Nadia said. Rowan looked at her. "You planned for the rose to come through the window?" It'll be beautiful, Nadia said. Imagine working at this desk in May with the rose coming in the window. Rowan looked at the window and at the rose and at the studio that had been made in a space that had been a storage room for 3 years. And then at the woman who had made it. Imagine, she said. They ate breakfast together that first morning in the apartment Rowan made it, because Rowan made breakfast. It was one of the established facts of their life together, and they sat at the small table in the kitchen, and the September light came in and the cafe below them was beginning to wake up. The sounds of it traveling through the floors. This was Nadia's life now. The sounds of the cafe below her in the morning. The light in the studio. The rose at the window. The woman across the table. She had left a green door behind and found something better than she'd known to wish for. She got up and went to the window of the kitchen, which looked out at the front of the building, gilding, at the planters and the window boxes and the trellis with the climbing rose. She looked at the sign above the door, visible from this angle. Rowan's. Coffee, tea, and honest food. She thought she should add something to the sign. She thought about what. She went to her studio and she sketched it out in addition to the sign, in the same hand-lettered style that she would make and add when she had the materials. Below the existing text, in small letters, and a place to belong. She brought the sketch down to show Rowan. Rowan looked at it for a long time. Then she looked at Nadia. Yes, she said. That 1 year. It had been 1 year since a March evening with 2 suitcases, and a green door that closed, and a sidewalk in the cold and 38 degrees, and a light at the end of a block. Nadia stood in the caf on a Thursday morning in March and felt the year turn over in her like the pages of a book being closed and reopened. She felt the particular quality of an anniversary, the way it overlays the present moment with the past one, creating a double exposure. The person you were and the person you are both visible at once. She was no longer the person she had been on that sidewalk. She was not entirely other than her either. She was a continuation of version that had been through something and had been changed by it and had made something out of the change. Her landscape practice was flourishing. The Parks Department Greenway project had been approved and was in design development, the largest commission she had ever had. She had 4 other active clients, 3 of which had come through the cafe's network, the warm web of connection that Rowan's world generated around it. She had a studio with good north light and a climbing rose at the window. Her relationship with her mother was a work in progress, as most important relationships are not fully healed, not fully easy, but moving. Her mother called twice a week now. She had come to Cedar Falls 3 more times since July, and each time had been easier than the last. She had sat at the farmhouse table and eaten Rowan's food and talked with Nadia in the way they had talked before everything. The way they had when Nadia was a child and her mother was the person who knew her best. She was not yet. There was not yet the mother who could say your life is right. Your love is right without the careful management of someone working through resistance. But she was moving toward it. And Nadia had come to understand that this was enough. That imperfect movement toward understanding was more than many people had, and that she was lucky in it. Her grandmother had visited in October. She'd flown from Lagos to Chicago, and Nadia had driven to collect her and bring her to Cedar Falls. And the 2 of them had sat in the cafe for a long afternoon while Rowan made jollof rice and a goosey soup and fried plantains. And the grandmother had eaten it all and then had looked at Rowan with an and the grandmother had eaten it all, and the grandmother had eaten it all, and then had looked at Rowan with a gut-ripped at Rowan with an hopped at Rowan with an expression of thorough approval that required no translation. You cook this for my granddaughter, she had said. In English, yes, Rowan said. Every week? Most weeks. The grandmother had nodded once, with the gravity of someone pronouncing a verdict. Good, she said. Tommy Dara's new partner, who had appeared in the fall and who Nadia had met on a visit to Des Moines and who was, she had texted Dara, absolutely perfect for her, had come to the cafe once and had been won over entirely by Rowan's cooking, which was how most people experienced Rowan's world. The cafe had changed too. The front garden was in its 2nd spring, and the rose that Nadia had trained up the trellis had, as predicted, reached the studio window and was beginning to push its first runners through. The Saturday morning events, a series that Nadia had proposed in January and that Rowan had implemented with her usual practical effectiveness, brought in a rotating community of people, a printmaking workshop, a seed starting clinic, Nadia's, a fermentation class, a book discussion group. The community garden project had led to a collaboration with the cafe that involved the cafe, selling produce from the garden in season and hosting workshops with the gardeners. A relationship that had expanded both endeavors. Professor Ellery, who had been coming in every day for 3 years, had told Rowan one morning that Rowan's cafe was the most important building in Cedar Falls. It's a storefront, Rowan had said. It's a living room, the professor had said. For the people who don't have one they feel safe in. Those are the important buildings. On the one-year morning, Nadia sat at the corner table, the one with the rosemary pot. The one she had sat at on the first evening. The one that had been hers since before it was hers. And she had her coffee in her sketchbook and she looked at the cafe and she drew it. She had been drawing the cafe for a year. She had a full sketchbook of it, every angle, every season, the light in different conditions. The plants in different stages, the people. She had drawings of Rowan that she could look at now without the careful containment of the early months. Drawings that were simply portraits of someone she loved. Made with the full attention and without apology. She was drawing the sign Rowan's. Coffee, tea, and honest food, and the addition she'd added in September, and a place to belong when Rowan came out from behind the counter and sat across from her. "What are you drawing?" Rowan asked. "The sign," Nadia said. She turned the sketchbook so Rowan could see. Rowan looked at it. She looked at the drawing, the building, the planters, the rose on the trellis, the sign with its hand-letter text. "I want to show you something," Rowan said. She reached into the pocket of her apron. She was in the linen apron, the one she always wore. The Rowan stitched on it that Nadia had restitched in December because the original was fraying, and she took out a small, folded piece of paper. She put it on the table. Nadia unfolded it. It was a drawing. Not her drawing, Rowan's hand, careful and slightly unpracticed. The drawing of someone who is not a visual artist, but who has spent time on this. It was a drawing of the back room of the cafe, the storage room, the daybed, the blankets. The small windows showing March outside. A figure on the daybed, sleeping, a young woman with her face turned toward the window. Underneath, in Rowan's block lettering, "The night you came in." Nadia looked at the drawing for a long time. "You drew this," she said. "I've been working on it since October," Rowan said. I know it's not what you do. But I wanted to make something." She paused. "I wanted to give you what you gave me when you showed me the redesigned drawings. Something made with my hands. From what I remember and what matters." Nadia looked at the figure in the drawing herself, a year ago. Asleep in the back room of a cafe she had walked into on the worst night of her life. "I look small," she said. "You were," Rowan said. "That night you were. Not your dignity was enormous. But the rest of you was very small." A pause. "You're not now." Nadia looked up from the drawing. "No," she said. "I'm not." Rowan reached across the table and took her hand. This was the year. A door that had closed and a light at the end of a block and a bowl of lentil soup. And a room with a slanted ceiling and a daybed with lavender blankets and 11 drawings and a rose on a trellis and a grandmother who flew from Lagos. And a mother who was learning and a studio with northlight and the sounds of a cafe through the floors in the morning. This was the year. A woman who cooked as a language of love and who asked the right questions at the right moments and who had built something in Cedar Falls because she believed you could make a corner of a place into what you needed. This was the year, learning what home was. Not a building on Elmwood Drive with a green door. Not a thing you were born into or owed. A thing you found, intended, and chose. A thing made of specific people and specific spaces. And the particular warmth of being known entirely and wanted anyway. This was the year Nadia Okafor was thrown out and found her way in. She held Rowan's hand across the corner table, and the March morning filled the cafe with its thin, early light, and the rose on the trellis outside the window had its first 2 buds of the season. Tight and red, promising. 2 years after the night Nadia walked in from the rain. A girl knocked on the door of Rowan's cafe at 7:15 in the evening. She was young, maybe 19, maybe 20. She was wearing a jacket too thin for the October cold and carrying a single backpack, and she knocked with the knuckles of someone who was not sure they had the right to. Nadia was closing up. She had taken over the evening clothes 3 months ago, freeing Rowan for the early morning prep that suited her body clock better. And she had made the closing routine her own, a particular order to the tasks. A specific playlist, the lamp behind the counter left on long after the overhead lights went off. Because she liked the quality of the light it made, she opened the door. The girl wished she could see it in the held posture. The careful expression, the way she was carrying the backpack as if it contained everything she had at the beginning of something. Some rupture, some threshold, some night that was going to be the before. Nadia held the door open. "Come in," she said. "You're letting the cold in." The girl came in. She looked around the cafe with the expression that Nadia recognized, had seen on herself, had seen on others who had come through the store in the 2 years since. The expression of someone who has been in the cold for a while and has walked into warmth and doesn't quite trust it yet. "I saw the sign," the girl said. She gestured at the window. "It says all are welcome. Especially if you're cold." "That's right," Nadia said. "I'm cold," the girl said. It was a simple statement and also not simple at all. "I know," Nadia said. "Sit down." She went to the kitchen. She made hot chocolate, the real kind, dark and deep, with a cinnamon stick the way Rowan had made it on the first night for her. She came back and set it on the table in front of the girl and sat across from her. "I'm Nadia," she said. "I run this place with my partner. Her name is Rowan." "I'm Claire," the girl said. She wrapped her hands around the mug with the gesture of someone receiving warmth they didn't know they needed until they had it. "Okay, Claire," Nadia said. "Do you have somewhere to sleep tonight?" The girl looked at the mug. "No," she said. "Okay," Nadia said. "Drink your chocolate. There's a daybed in the back room with clean blankets. And tomorrow we figure out the next step." "Why are you?" Claire started. She looked up. "Why are you doing this?" Nadia looked at her. She thought about a March night, 3 years ago, and 38 degrees and 2 suitcases and a woman in a linen apron, who had asked the right question at the right time and not asked for anything in return. "Because someone did it for me," she said. "And it changed everything." Claire looked at her across the table. What did it change? She asked. Nadia thought about it. She thought about the studio with north light and the rose coming in the window and her grandmother at the farmhouse table and her mother on the phone twice. A week in the sketchbook full of drawings and Rowan's hand across the table on a March morning. "Everything," she said. It changed everything. She got up to make another cup of chocolate for herself because some conversations required more chocolate and the café was quiet around them. Warm and planted and lit with its particular quality of warmth. The sign in the window making its promise to the dark. Street outside, the door was open. It was always open. And on the trellis outside, in the October cold, the climbing rose held its last red hips of the season, the remnants of the summer blooms. Small and bright and stubbornly persistent the way all living things hold what they have been given. The way warmth persists in the things that have been filled with it and made slowly, deliberately, lovingly, into somewhere that belongs to the people who need it. This is the story, not just of Nadia and Rowan, though it is entirely that, but of every person who has been thrown out into the cold and found a light at the end of a block and walked toward it not knowing what it was, only knowing it was warm and that warmth was what they needed. Of every woman who has had to find her own way home and found. In the finding, that home was not what she thought. It was not a building or a family or an inherited belonging, but a thing made between specific people and specific places with specific and deliberate love. Of every door that was opened because someone remembered what it was to need it opened. This is the story. The door is always open. Come in.